Good afternoon. My name is Sandro Gonzalez Jr. I'm a political science major, and I'm here to discuss President-elect Trump's foreign policy agenda and explain why it is incomplete. The first thing on President-elect Trump's foreign policy agenda is to select his foreign policy cabinet. His goal is to fill the positions with new voices or younger and less experienced politicians. The positions in the foreign policy cabinet are Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, CIA Director, Attorney General, and Secretary of Homeland Security. Newt Gingrich is the top contender for the Secretary of State because Gingrich defended Trump during his campaign when allegations are being made. Gingrich is more than qualified for the position since he's a former Speaker of the House, an architect for the GOP's Contract of America in the 1990s, and a professor at the University of West Georgia. His competitors are Bob Corker, Senator from Tennessee, and John Bolton, former ambassador for the United Nations. Now, Corker is at a disadvantage only because he strongly is against Russia and forming any type of relation or trade agreement with them. Trump has made it known that he fully intends to restore relations with Russia. John Bolton is interested in this position due to Trump's new America First agenda for the United Nations. Next is the Secretary of Defense, with the nominees being Senator Jeff Sessions of Alabama, Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, Jim Talent, and Michael Flynn. Sessions and Trump have a strong connection since they both opposed the United Nations' $1.2 billion plan to renovate the Manhattan headquarters. Sessions was also mentioned by Trump during his victory speech. Christie has been a Trump activist since the beginning of the presidential campaign, and Talent has expressed a strong disagreement with Trump's foreign policy agenda, which puts him at the bottom of the list. Now, Flynn is a former director for the Defense Intelligence Agency. However, for him to qualify for this position, he's going to need a waiver from Congress because the law was put in place requiring military officers to wait 7 years before returning to the Pentagon as top civilian leaders. CIA Director candidates are Michael Flynn and Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers is a former Michigan representative and Republican chairman of the House and Intelligence Committee. The competition between these positions will be pretty intense as we see which direction Donald Trump's foreign policy cabinet will go into. For Attorney General, Christie and Rudy Giuliani, the former New York mayor, are the candidates. Both of these candidates are loyal to Trump. However, Chris Christie is at a disadvantage due to the Bridgegate scandal. Lastly is the Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security. The contenders are Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas, and David Clark. There hasn't been given a lot of information about these two candidates and his qualifications for this position, so it's going to be an interesting race between the two. President-elect Trump has made it clear that he plans to reestablish relations with Russia. And Putin has also expressed his eagerness to begin talks with President-elect Trump after his inauguration. If these talks are successful, then tensions could finally start to diminish between the two nations. Trump has also announced that he plans to abandon security alliances with Japan, NATO, and South Korea. This means that Trump wants them to be more independent militarily. Japan, as we know, has no military of their own because the United States and Japan agreement after World War II, which puts the United States military in charge of protecting Japan. South Korea also has U.S. troops. These troops are located at the DMZ border. Removal of these troops from the border would mean that South Korea would be vulnerable to outside forces such as North Korea or China. This could lead to China growing a tremendous influence, both economically and militarily. The Iran nuclear deal is, quote unquote, one of the worst agreements ever negotiated, according to President-elect Donald J. Trump. He is demanding changes or restorations of certain issues in the agreement, and the current agreement places sanctions on Iran, specifically targeting their missile technology and development of nuclear weapons. They are prohibited from obtaining weapons-grade plutonium and forced to reduce the time it takes for them to gather the materials needed for a nuclear bomb from 2 to 3 months to at least 1 year. Congress has stated they will not hesitate to declare war on Iran if they begin developing nuclear weapons. So if Trump rips up this new deal, Iran could begin developing nuclear weapons and force Congress to declare war. And Iran is a growing country. Their influence in the Middle East has become tremendous, especially in fighting ISIS. The last item on Trump's foreign policy agenda is to impose tariffs on China. This means all imports and exports from China will receive higher taxes. This could lead to China reducing what they export to the United States, causing an issue with our current trade agreement. Decrease in supply leads to an increase in demand, which will lead to an increase in price. This would harm both economies, increase prices in the United States, and an overstock in China. Now, China receives imports from neighboring countries, such as Korea, Singapore, Philippines, and Thailand, so that China can create all these items, such as phones, tablets, and anything else that says made in China. The tariffs would cause a huge economic catastrophe in all these nations and potentially cause market failures. In conclusion, President-elect Trump's foreign policy agenda still needs a lot of work and reconsideration. His ideas could lead us to war or into an economic collapse, and Trump needs to come up with new ideas before he begins doing anything. Thank you for your time.